My name is Todd Lambrix.
My name is Nathan Gilby.
And I cast guidance.
So, if you've ever played a tabletop role-playing game before, you know how important the dice are. Todd, I know for a fact you have one die that is your absolute favorite, and you have one die that you absolutely hate.
I completely do. There's one die that I will go to in my tray when I know I need to roll well.
Yeah? Which one is it?
Well, it is made of hematite. Mm-hmm. So it's a metal die, or it's stone, metal, somewhere in between those two. I don't know what hematite is, actually, but it's a mineral, I think. Anyway, I know that die consistently rolls high.
Yeah.
So I'm going to grab that die.
I mean, your Eye of Sauron die, which literally has the floating Eye of Sauron, so that whenever you throw the die, the eye like points up at you.
Yes.
That one rolled like 3 nat 20s in a row. Or no, was it 5?
It wasn't 5. I've never rolled 5 natural in a row.
That was insane though. But it was in like the same sitting. I actually once, with my 3 main D20s, I rolled all 3 of them at the same time for some reason, and they all turned up as nat 1s together.
Right.
Like
I remember you
them together.
flipped. You jumped out of your skin.
I was like, I can't trust these dice anymore. Like, I need to throw it all away. I need to burn everything and just buy new ones. Like, I can't believe I got fucked over that hard.
But we talk about this, like we've had great conversations about probability and chances and how dice truly function. Now, of course, we're not taking into account a poorly made die, a die that is not accurately balanced, right? I will assume that if I pay a premium price for a set of dice, and of course, this is probably irresponsible of me, but I'll assume it's well balanced.
Yeah.
Right? Okay.
You could test it yourself too.
You could.
You know.
That Eye of Sauron die that you mentioned, is hot and cold. So it's the opposite. Like, I know the hematite die is gonna roll well.
Yeah.
But the Eye of Sauron die has its moments. It's almost like it has moods.
It's funny. It's really funny though that we assign these like personality to our die. I actually remember a really interesting study that was mentioned on Radiolab, and they did an entire podcast episode on like randomness, basically. And it was this study where you had 2 groups and they were supposed to generate some list of random numbers, and some sort of like person who specializes in probability is going to look at the list and determine which is a real list of randomly generated numbers and which one is fake. So what happens is group A flips a coin and marks heads or tails, and they do that 100 times. And group B doesn't flip a coin, but they write down what they think would probably happen. So they write down like, oh, maybe heads, tails, heads, tails, tails. And the person who was supposed to guess which group actually flipped the coin guessed it right, because they took a look at the list and they looked for the list that had a run of 7 heads or tails in a row. Because to us, we're like, 7 heads in a row, that's too suspicious. Like, they're going to know that that's the made up list of numbers, but the coin doesn't know.
Yeah.
In fact, in 100 coin tosses, it's fairly probable that you are going to get 7 heads in a row.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So the group that had that 7 in a row was the real list of like actual coin flips.
So the opposite of what you'd expect.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so we get into these, like, we have these days where we feel like our dice are cursing us, but it's really just that in however many times we've ever rolled these dice, like, it's going to happen.
Of course. Yeah. And I'm excited about today's conversation because we're talking about, number one, why do we utilize dice in these games or in storytelling or in other modes of our existence? What can chance, probability, what can they teach us about the world and about our lives? And we're going to tackle this from 2 points of view. We're going to tackle this from the mathematic point of view and the probability point of view. And then we're also going to move on over to a more subjective side and consider things like luck and divination and this idea that something is possessed in those dice somewhere.
By the way, the episode that was from, so the podcast is called Radio Lab. It was their episode called Stochasticity. I think that's how you pronounce it. Really great episode. Please check it out.
So let's get back to probability for a second.
Yeah.
I mean, I have a story I could tell about that probably goes off the rails a little bit and is unconnected to this, but it's not. A friend of mine, when I was in graduate school, we were simultaneously, he was at Brown and I was at RISD. And he was he was minoring in probability science. And so he was he was able to figure out odds and probability on the most bizarre things. And so we used to commute back and forth to New York City from Providence because we'd go down to see galleries. And one day we're passing by Foxwoods Casino. And we started talking about probability and odds and how if there was truly a coin toss type game, like the house always has an edge. The house is always going to beat you one way or another, meaning the casino will take your money. But we were like, what if there was a way to play true probability science into this? And so we thought about which games in the casino had the closest 50-50, because none truly do. And there's this wheel that you can spin that has all these money denominations on it. There's ones, fives, tens, 20s, and then a joker. And it's broken up in such a way that almost half of the spaces on the wheel are ones, because a one, should you win on a one, will pay you 1-to-1 on your bet. Bet $2 on the one and the one comes up, you get $2 on your $2. But here's the thing. If that was 50-50, you'd have it made. You'd be able to stand there all day long and the odds would say that you're neither going to win nor lose. You're going to kind of break even, but maybe have fun. But because those jokers are on the wheel, it throws it off just a bit. So there aren't half ones. There's like 49 out of 100 ones. And that other one is taken up by a joker. Now, we decided, or he decided through his math, that if you went and put $1 on the one and won, you got $1. So let's follow this chain of thought for 1 minute. All right. So the way this works is in that semi close to 50-50 situation, like this money wheel, the rule is you pick a baseline number. In this case, let's say it's $2 because $2 is the minimum bet, right? You put $2 on the one denomination. And when the one comes up, you get paid $2. If the one does not come up, you lose your $2. So let's say we go up, we put our $2 down and we lose. We're now down $2. So what we do is we double our bet. Now we put $4 down.
Yeah.
And we lose. So we're out $6, right? So now we've got to double our bet. So we put 2, we put 4, we're down 6. Now we're going to put 8.
Oh.
Okay. So we put an $8 bet down and lo and behold, we win. So we get $8 back. We were down 6. We made 8. We are now up 2. Now you play this constantly. Now that we won, we go back to a $2 bet, right? And every time we win, we're just betting $2 because every time we win, we're up another 2. So the calculation he made in this was how many times in a row would we have to lose in order to run out of money? So let's pretend we have an infinite pool of money, right? Because if you do the math on this, let's count them out. Losses, right? $2, $4, $8, $16, 32, 64, 128, 256, 512, 1024, 2048. And that there was 11 bets. Okay. What are the odds of losing 11 times in a row on a coin toss? You just said 7 times in a row. What are the odds of losing 11? So he calculated it out. And the odds of losing 11 times in a row are something like 0.000. And some of you out there are going to figure this out and kill me on this. But it was, Nathan will figure it out.
Well, yeah, that's 1 over 2048.
Right.
I mean, that's entirely improbable.
Right. So we figured that as long as we had $2,048 in our pocket going in, we couldn't lose.
Right.
And it was just a matter of time and we would just build this money. Right. So we being the brilliant graduate students that we were, grab some money and go straight to Foxwoods. And we were there for hours and it was working. We were up a lot of money.
Yeah.
Like a lot of money. And the funny thing was, is the one dealer who was spinning the wheel knew exactly what we were up to.
Yeah.
It's like, did we think we were really the first people on Earth to think of this before? And it actually has a name. It's like called a Chicago, or I forget what it's called. But anyway, long story short, the house is always going to win.
Yeah.
And here's the other thing is there was a $5,000 maximum bet on that wheel. So if you did get to 11, you couldn't make the next bet because it would be $5,056. You can't do that. Or 4,050, 2048, 40, 50.
Well, I mean, it really doesn't matter how much money you accrue. It comes down to the last bet. It comes down to when do you know is the right time to drop out? Because that last time you say, okay, I'm actually gonna, like, this is the last one, I'm gonna stop. Then it's just a 50-50, take it or leave it.
Right.
That means 50% of the people who are doing that exact thing are going to walk away with nothing.
Right. Right. Actually, if you do the house edge, it's slightly less, right?
Yeah.
So, or slightly more than 50%.
Yeah.
Anyway, this is neither here nor there in terms of dice rolls, but what it does do is it sort of plays to this idea that we consider probability in these things.
Right. Well, also the fact that, I mean, for the most part, we kind of suck at understanding probability.
I certainly do.
Yeah. I mean, like, I don't know. I mean, casinos are a great example. The fact that it's a whole space that's designed to generate like revenue based on people's like imperfect understanding of probability.
Right.
Like, yes, there are going to be people who win, but they've worked it out mathematically such that the people who lose more money than the people who win make.
Right.
And of course, there needs to be people who win, because if people don't win, what's the point in going to the casino at all?
Right. But when we play tabletop role-playing games, we are choosing to bring in a system of wins and losses, for lack of a better word.
Yeah.
So why do we do this?
Why do we do this?
Why do we do that?
Well, we use it to model real life, Todd.
How so?
How so? Okay. So, first of all, I'm not a god. So when I try to lift something up, I could probably place pretty accurate odds depending on if I'm going to be able to do that thing or not.
What, like lift a car?
Yeah. If I were to lift a car, there's some pretty slim chances that I'm going to be able to lift a car, but it's not like it's determined in the moment. Like, yes, 1% of the time, if you get lucky, you can like lift up this car. It's purely situational. You know, like I don't know if this is really true or not, but you hear about like moms who like lift up the car to save their baby. Like,
yeah, the adrenaline push.
The adrenaline push, like incredibly situational. But it's the fact like, well, why do I do things at all if I'm not certain that things are going to work out? It's because I know that I have a shot at doing things, right? And that makes things worth it. But if I was able to do anything without being slightly challenged, I would be a god. There would be no reason to do anything.
So in this respect, in the one that we're talking about now, and we're going to get into some other not deeper, I shouldn't say deeper because that assumes some kind of hierarchy. But in the situation you're describing, this is really just about a mechanic. Can I do the thing or can I not do the thing?
Yes. I think it's pretty much that. Okay. Well, because in a role-playing sense, I can't account for all the factors of like, am I going to be able to lift this heavy thing? Well, like, actually, what's happening inside your muscles? Have you eaten enough today? Like, are you accidentally going to have like a thunderclap heart attack, or is your Achilles tendon going to snap? Like, you can't account for all of those things. So these likelihoods that we can assign to completing tasks successfully or unsuccessfully, it accounts for all of those things that are taken care of under the hood in real life.
That's pretty cool what you just said about, all these factors. Did I eat well today? Did I get enough sleep last night? Am I going to have a heart attack when I try to lift this up? Because if we consider a game like Daggerheart and how Daggerheart introduces the 2D12 system, which now takes probability and puts it more on a bell curve rather than some kind of just linear 1 in 20 roll. And then we add to it this idea that you could succeed or fail with hope or fear.
Yeah.
Now we have a narrative building element that gets put into play alongside of, or maybe even in tandem with, the bell curve. Right. Because now I can sort of say, well, why did I fail with fear? Well, it's because I didn't do X, Y, and Z that day. A concept that might not be brought into a simple probability rule.
Right. Well, it's really interesting that you bring up the bell curve. I mean, because D&D does have a very linear curve. You know that when you are rolling at a 15, you have no modifiers. That gives you, I think it's a 30% chance of succeeding, because that's 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. Yeah, that's 6 out of 20. That's a 30% chance of succeeding. You mean it, you beat it. And so if you shift that down 14, that's a 35% chance. And in fact, however many up or down you shift it, your percent goes up or down
5.
Yeah, by a scalar multitude of 5%. But for Daggerheart, as you push it to either end, because you're rolling 2 die together, and there are more ways to roll a 13 sum than there are to roll a 2 or a 24, it's going to be more likely that you roll towards the center than to the ends.
Right.
So
you could roll a 13 by rolling an 8 and a 5, a 6 and a 7, a 9 and a 4.
Right. So if you want to make a check really stupid hard, you push it all the way to the end, because there's no fucking way that you're going to roll that.
Well, this was the monumental problem I always found with difficulty class in D&D anyway. It was like, if I make the difficulty class an 18, it certainly does say, yeah, there are fewer numbers that could meet or beat that in this. Right. But imagine when I used to do like encounter rolls, I could decide, well, what does constitute a random encounter?
Yeah.
And I could make it anything. It doesn't have to be above an 18. Right. It could be, well, if they roll a 7, an 8, or a 4, there'll be an encounter.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter.
Well, I mean, even talking about distributions, I think distributions are important. That's the meat and potatoes of how we have roles modeling real life. If you're a big, strong dude picking up a big rock, there's a pretty good chance that you can do it. You're a scrawny dude picking up a big rock, you're not going to be able to do it. You need some sort of curve to model the likelihood of being able to complete that task.
Which to me becomes the reason for the GM having a real responsibility at this point to carefully choose that difficulty class. Difficulty class now becomes more important than it used to be. Right. And I know it usually gets sort of broken down to, is this extremely easy or is this extremely difficult? Right. Everything in between. And we have a spectrum. However, I think that we should apply that bell curve to how we apply difficulty class as well, because we know more of the numbers are going to come up in the middle of that curve.
Right.
So that's interesting to me.
Wait, are you saying like difficulty class for enemies? Like you randomly generate the difficulty class of the enemies that you face?
I wasn't saying that, but that's interesting to think about.
That would be nuts.
Right? Because let's say I know the probability of my players rolling somewhere between 11 and 13 or 11 and 15 is higher. That's probably going to, in an encounter situation, I might choose something that's more commonplace and mundane because I know we're probably going to roll in that place.
Right.
But if they crit or if they roll a 24, then something really heavy duty is going to appear.
Yeah.
But the same applies if they roll a 3, because there's just as much probability that they would roll a 23 as there is that they would roll a 3.
Yeah.
There's only 2 ways to do it.
Yeah.
So to me, those slim odds, or being at the lower end of the bell curve, create incredible risk.
Yeah. By the way, I think that's a 1/72 odds that you roll a 3 or a 23.
Yeah.
Each.
And I think it's important to know that for the GM. It's like these odds are not about high or low. They're about which numbers. It's sort of like craps.
Right.
Like when you're in the casino playing craps, it's nearly, like rolling a 3 or rolling, it's basically a 3 or an 11 have the slimmest chance of the numbers that are not, and 7 obviously has the highest chance.
Right.
So what combinations of dice create the fewest outcomes and the most common outcome?
Right. Well, that's the really interesting thing about the Daggerheart roll system is, and let me recap this for people who don't know about the Daggerheart roll system. Instead of rolling with your D20, what you do is you roll with two D12s and you roll them together and you add them up. And that's your roll.
Right. And in any situation where the two dice match, you roll doubles, essentially. That is a critical success.
Yeah.
So you can roll a 2 in Daggerheart, which is 2 1s, and that is still a critical success.
But the Daggerheart 2D12 system is such an interesting like analogy to what's actually happening. Because if you're an average guy rolling at a +0, if that is modeling your success odds in real life, you're going to do at about the middle. You're expected to do about like the average guy roll.
Right.
But if you roll a 3 or you roll a 23, like that is way out of your expected odds. That is really like a magnificent failure or a magnificent success.
Right. Right. So here's my question, because you're the math person.
Yes.
Is rolling a critical success, rolling both of those dice the same, is that 1 in 144 because it's 12 to 2?
Well, each one rolling a 2, or like rolling 2 1s, 2 2s, 2 3s, those are each 1 over 144. But add it all up together, the probability that you roll a critical success is 1 over 12.
Oh, because there are 12 possible ways to do it.
Out of the 144 ways to roll your duality die.
So then is it more likely you will roll a critical success than you will roll a 23 or a 3?
Yes, because a 23 has a 1 over 72 chance.
Right.
Yeah.
That's interesting that critical success now has more possibilities than some of the rarer numbers in the dice combo.
Well, that's a funny thing too. Like the way that you can narrate successes in Daggerheart is so interesting, because if you roll 2 1s, you're rolling 2. You're rolling the lowest you can roll in the 2D12 system, but that's still a success, which means you can narrate a scenario in which you fuck up so bad that you succeed.
Oh, yes, because it's a low. Yeah, because now all of a sudden we can reapply the spectrum of success to failure based on low or high.
Yeah.
And then decide how the success plays out. I didn't think of that.
It's like in the movies when the really nerdy geeky guy goes up to like the prettiest girl in the room and is like, hey, you like Dungeons and Dragons? And then she's like really into him. Like it's like that. Like you're sitting there, you're cringing. You're like, holy fuck. Like, oh my God, do you go outside? And then you're like, how do you pull that?
Wait a minute. I never would have considered that scenario, but yeah, that's great. So what we're doing here is, this is an interesting little segue, is we are taking all these odds-based numbers and bell curves and probability, and now we're injecting a little bit of the magic.
Well, yeah, because we're talking about how effectively it models the scenarios.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know, go ahead. You first.
Yeah, my excitement about the Daggerheart roll system is that there are more ways that you can effectively use the roll to tell the story. You can use that bit of randomness to seed yet another part of the story.
Yeah. Well, and this is interesting for our second half of the show, which we'll get to in a little bit. But in the second half of the show, we're going to move into the more subjective terms that these things take place in, right? And so when we consider notions of synchronicity, which I'm going to pull into this, synchronicity being a series of events that are connected in some way, shape, or form, but we attribute the connection to something that goes beyond the material plane, right? That some other force pulled this together. But that's the point, is that the Daggerheart die system says, wait a minute, there's more to these numbers than just probability. Right. Objectivity now needs subjectivity.
Yeah. I'm so excited for that part, Todd.
Yeah, that's going to be good. Like, but let's go back to probability for a second.
So I want to do a little bit of reframing on the question, at least for myself, because how I started researching for this was I asked, why do we include randomness in our TTRPGs? And I think randomness is a bit too vague, because I think what it's about is levels of predictability, right?
Okay.
So if we create a really easy skill check, it's much easier to predict for us what's going to happen. Odds are you're going to succeed. And it's pretty exciting when you don't succeed because that was very unlikely to happen. Or vice versa. When I think randomness, and I think when a lot of us think of randomness, we think of chaos. And if we wanted to include chaos in the games, everything would be a coin flip. Fuck modifiers, fuck like thresholds for these skill checks. You would be flipping a coin 50-50 every time. The scrawny guy would pick up the rock just as often as the bulky dude. And that just, that doesn't make sense.
Right.
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 So the thing is, like, it's not that, oh, we want randomness in the game to keep it exciting. We want the game to be accurate to the real world. So we need some quantified level of unpredictability.
Got it. Yeah.
Right? And if you think back to the Matrix, by the way, my dad pointed this out. I think it was the first 7 matrices failed because they didn't include randomness. They didn't include room for things to be slightly unpredictable.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And the Truman Show too. Why does he go insane? Because he realizes that everything around him is the same every day. The same dude on the bike passes. The same 3 cars are on the street at the same time. The same people are in the same place every single day. Right?
So this is an interesting thought because in a lot of ways, this is the bridge to our subjective side.
Yeah.
Because I'm thinking about the plot tool of Deus Ex Machina, which is typically something people criticize, right? So Deus Ex Machina is this plot tool of God from the machine. And, our least favorite example of Deus Ex Machina is you're in this incredible story and it was all a dream.
Yeah.
And I mentioned this in an earlier podcast months and months and months ago, where there's this movie called Boxing Helena, which is the most weird, fantastical, strange art film you've ever seen. I'm going to guarantee that less than 1% of you out there have even heard of that movie before. And I'm not going to say that it ends in a dream because I don't want to spoil it for you, but it's kind of like that. It infuriates us when we realize that everything we've built up to is just kind of like this asinine solution.
Yeah.
Right. So, but what Deus Ex Machina does allow, right, is us to go to a place of impossibility and then generate an outcome that is unexpected.
Yeah.
Right. So if we are responsible with our Deus Ex Machina scenario, i.e., very difficult rolls of the dice, we can generate a story that is plausible,
right,
but improbable.
Yeah. Well, that's the funny thing. I just remembered something about movies that pisses me off. And it's when there's a great example of this in the recent Star Wars movies. And I know everybody has a problem with the recent Star Wars movies. I'm not that attached to Star Wars anyway, so whatever. But is the new character Rey? Is that her name? Yeah. Where she's standing on some planet and she has some sort of dagger with her where like part of the hilt comes out and it's supposed to represent, it's supposed to match up with pieces of the remnants of the Death Star that have like fallen onto this planet. And it points out a location that she has to go to. But that wouldn't have worked out if she wasn't in that exact spot with that exact object and had the idea at that exact time to be like, oh, maybe I should see if there's something special about this knife. It's kind of like, okay, well, where the fuck did any of this come from? Like, I'm sorry. If you're 20 meters in the other direction, you were not going to put that shit together. Like, it just feels cheap. And it's some contrived, like, scenario where everything just worked out so perfectly. And it's like never in a million years.
More than
would
a
that
million
happen?
years. That's like the scenario in quantum physics where if I walk into the wall every second,
all of your atoms will align.
Yes, and I'll be able to pass through the wall. So, yeah, because I think what's happening there is, as Deus Ex Machina goes, right, we look to that model. We look to the dice and the way we sort of structure, the mechanics around dice rolls, we look to create the possibility of something profound. Right. Because if the little guy on some natural 20 is able to lift the boulder, it's a moment of heroicism.
Yeah.
It's a moment of surprise.
Right.
We're looking to get out. Why do we go to these games in the first place? It's to kind of get ourselves into a space that is fantastical. And so, great, let's give ourselves the possibility of that. I think that the issue for you in Star Wars is how that moment was just like,
it's undeserved.
It's undeserved. It's so outside. It's like God from the machine. It's sort of like, here we have a problem. God from the machine, by the way, Deus Ex Machina, comes from how in early play situations, there would be a situation that was kind of like, what do we do here? And all of a sudden God would fly in on a crane.
Well, that's just how they used to end plays.
Right.
It was always resolved by the gods somehow.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Exactly. So it's like, make an impossible situation. Don't worry. Somebody with divine intervention is going to come in and do it.
Well, I mean, speaking of gods, I kept coming back in my research to the concept of God and how if we're unchallenged in whatever we do, we are like gods, where we have the capabilities to just do whatever we want, whenever we want it.
Yes. And it's bad enough. It's bad enough that when we come to the table to play a tabletop role-playing game, we, in some senses, are adopting a role that does not have actual consequences, right? The roles that we can't live out in the street. I can't walk into the center of town with a sword drawn because I'm going to get tased. But, you know, in this case, we have these consequenceless situations. So it's bad enough we're doing that. We don't want it also to have complete and utter, carte blanche.
Right. Well, also, having that much power always makes an ass out of you. I mean, I'm sorry. Yeah. Think about the rich motherfuckers that live in this country completely unchecked and do not care about the people below them. It's because they don't have to care. Well, there's no struggle, so they don't have to care.
That is the person who comes to the table with the stat sheet for their character that is all maxed. It's like, what are you playing, a Marvel superhero?
What the fuck are you doing?
Right.
I mean, think about like the Greco-Roman gods. Like, I mean, yeah, they're cruel for one reason or another, but I couldn't imagine being all powerful and immortal and still finding a reason to care. I care because I'm going to die someday.
That's right. You care because of temporality.
Because I'm limited.
You are limited. And in that limitation, you know that you have limited time. You have to make the most of that time.
Yeah.
So this is a problem of creativity. And I teach this to my students. Limitation forces creativity. The more limitations we have, the more we are willing to invest in what we do have. Whereas if I give you it all, you have unlimited time and unlimited resources, you're not going to know what to do with yourself. Right. So I find those people to be the most boring. Like I've always said, this is my saying, if all you know how to make is money, we're not going to be friends.
No.
Let's go to the break.
Yeah.
And I think when we come back from the break, we're going to move more into the subjective realm here and kind of talk about the ways in which we look to rolls of the dice and probability situations to have a deeper understanding of what's not in front of us. All right, we'll be right back.
Welcome to the break, everybody. First of all, thank you so much for being here, and thank you so much for listening along with us. We really love making this content, all the research and preparation and talking that goes into it, and being able to come together every week and just talk about it and make it into something for you guys to listen along to. It's really like a rewarding process that I feel incredibly proud of.
Yeah, having you guys on the other end of this, commenting and checking in to see that you're listening really, sort of validates what we do all the time. So one of the things we wanted to mention to you is where we can be found in the various locations that we post things.
In addition to wherever you are currently listening, we are also on Substack, where we post all of our podcast content, but we also write a lot of content too.
So you can find us at icastguidance.substack.com. And there you'll be able to, number one, sign up for our newsletter. Number two, you'll be able to see regular blog posts that we drop with our thoughts that eventually lead to the very podcasts that you're listening to.
If you're also a fan of live content, we do live playthroughs of D&D and Daggerheart. We also have some how-tos for the different TTRPGs that we play. And we have some cinematic content live on our YouTube at Wither and Bloom Studios.
And last but not least, on our website at witherandbloomstudios.com, you can, number one, find an aggregation point for all of these different things we've mentioned. And number two, in our merchandise shop, we will soon be dropping PDFs of campaign frames, adventure modules. We got t-shirts and hoodies and other fun stuff you can get over there as well. But definitely go check out the website and you can find everything that we're up to, including our schedule.
By the way, if you listen to the rest of this episode, you get a +2 to your future role-playing endeavors.
Yeah, go ahead and tell your DM or GM that one.
They'll love it. All right, let's get back to the show.
All right, so we're back from the break. And I think we want to shift gears here and go from the objective to the subjective. But you're already telling me that you're going to keep bringing it back around to science.
Well, yeah, because I think there are just some really beautiful ways to connect everything.
I think they are all connected.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm looking forward to the way you make these connections.
Oh, I'm so excited. I mean, like I sat down on Friday. Yeah, I sat down on Friday morning and I was like, listen, I'm not going to have any other day to research this. I've already burned my time before in the week. So I sat down for 4 hours. I just typed. I typed and I wrote on a notepad. And I came up with some ideas I'm really proud of. So I'm going to find a way to put them in here. God damn it.
Well, let's put them in here. Well, actually, how about this?
Yeah.
Let's start this whole thing with something that you closed before the break with, and that is about predictability, right? Because predictability is boring. Predictability is that which we understand, right? So when we don't understand something or we encounter what is unpredictable or not understandable, we look to some of these things for that meaning, right? Early artists in, say, the Dada and Fluxus movements knew this. They injected absurdity into the art world and turned it on its head. Marcel Duchamp takes a urinal and puts it into the Armory exhibit, of which he was a judge, signs it art and says, this is art, turns the world on its head. It becomes this unpredictable, absurdist kind of move. But we find meaning in those things. Right. So now all of a sudden, by that one simple move of sticking that urinal into an exhibition, the entirety of art and its trajectory and the way content is derived is totally changed.
Yeah.
Right. So this is a way to upset the constant presence of predictability.
Yeah.
Right.
I'm sorry. I'm just thinking about meme culture.
Okay.
Meme culture, I think, is one of like the most unpredictable things.
Yeah.
Where it's like something seemingly entirely random comes in and rules the internet for like weeks, and then it leaves like it was never there.
Yeah, that's true.
Right?
That's true.
Right? I mean, it's like all these algorithms thrive off of that factor of unpredictability, to at least to my generation. I feel like sometimes it just tries to serve up the least predictable things, and then you get like the biggest reaction out of all of us.
Right. And when we sit down to play these games, we don't create scenarios. Maybe some of you do. I don't know, but I've never heard of this before. But we don't create scenarios where today's campaign frame is going to be the kitchen of a suburban middle income household, and we're deciding if we can make the ham sandwich or not,
right? Because
it's like, where's the fun in that?
Deciding if we can pay the water bill,
right?
You know,
we don't want to do those things.
No excitement,
right? So this absurdity, this thing that we can sort of derive from areas where culture and our understanding of our lives have been upset or upended. You know, if we look at Fluxus as an art movement, right, and we look at artists like John Cage and Merce Cunningham. So John Cage was a composer and Merce Cunningham was a choreographer. He was a dance person. they decided to sort of embrace the unpredictability of chance operations. And they became really invested in the I Ching, which is the ancient Chinese text of randomly generating answers through flips of the coin. They would use the I Ching to not only write musical compositions, but to decide like how many steps a dancer might take in a particular direction, all developed by tosses of the coin.
Right.
So this led me to like start looking at the I Ching. And you and I were just talking a minute ago about, like the 50-50 coin toss.
Yeah.
Well, the I Ching is all based on that. So the basic principle of the I Ching is you have 3 coins and you flip the 3 coins and you derive a linear illustration from the 3 coins. So the 3 coins can have different outcomes, right? There's either 2 heads and a tail, 2 tails and a head, or all 3 are the same.
Okay.
And the lines that are drawn are representations of the yin and yang, which that's an early illustration that was created along with the I Ching text. You do this flip of the coins 6 times. Okay. And I'm already watching you count out on your fingers. You're coming up with numbers here, and that's exactly right. Right. So if I do this 6 times, I'm going to draw 6 lines, and those 6 lines will either be a solid line,
right,
or a broken line.
Yeah.
Okay. From that, and you do them in order. You go from bottom to top, doing them in order. Then you take that image, which is an image of 6 broken and unbroken lines stacked on top of each other, and you go to the I Ching text. Now, there's 64 possibilities of outcomes in those. They're called the hexagrams. And you go look at the hexagrams, and they give you meaning.
Yeah.
You read the meaning in them. Yeah.
Are you sure it's 6 times?
I think so.
Because 4, 4, and 4 is 64. Is there 4 possibilities?
I'm almost positive it's 6 times.
Okay. Just wanted to be sure.
Yeah, I'm almost positive it's 6 times. But the point here is this, is that Cunningham and Cage would look to this for art, but the Chinese would look to this for meaning in the world.
Yeah.
Right? Because the various designations on this hexagram for the different possibilities of just 3 rolls, right, or 3 flips, related to different things like water, thunder, fire, earth, the heavens, and so on and so forth. And then because of cross representations and the juxtapositions of things on that chart,
right,
they derived meaning from that.
Yeah.
So in a way, the flip of the coin becomes this mystical thing that is going to land for a reason unbeknownst to me, but must be controlled by someone. There must be a God.
So you have to look for meaning in it.
Yes.
Right. So it's this randomly generated thing that you believe was generated for a reason. And so you look for meaning. I mean, that's why tarot works.
Right.
That's exactly why tarot works.
Right.
And, that's not to say like, oh, these things are just random processes. They're devoid of some sort of being or force acting upon them. But regardless, it's that you're looking for meaning in something that you believe the outcome was made for some reason. I think what I had said going back, I had run into this thought experiment of Laplace's demon. This is about causal determinism, which is the idea that today's events were shaped by yesterday's events, and today's events will shape tomorrow's events. And so Laplace's demon is this being that if it knew what every atom in the universe was doing and all the forces that were acting upon it, then it would be able to accurately predict the future. And so, I mean, this kind of makes a mess out of free will, but that's a thing that philosophers talk about a lot. And I don't want to touch it because I don't want to anger any philosophers because they're very touchy about wording. Believe me, I live with a philosopher.
Yes, I've actually lived with a couple myself.
So, you really feel like you're in hot water really fast.
Right.
When you say something that's a little wrong, you're like, oh, no. But no, philosophers are really brilliant people.
But you were talking about Laplace's demon and that this idea that the knowledge,
Yeah.
I mean, okay, so you're talking about all the atoms and what the pressures on the atoms and forces are,
Right.
what they're going to do and what they have done. So if in a sense, I'm going to go back to earlier before the break when we were talking about gambling and how if I am at a craps table and the dice get pushed to me and I get to pick them up and roll and I've got money riding on this, like I'm ready to go.
Yeah.
Right. I'm going to take those dice and I'm going to flip them for me, it's always, I flip them so 7 is facing up.
Right.
And I even like the 3 and the 4 to be oriented in a certain way.
Yeah.
I pinch them between my thumb and my index finger and I throw them in a very particular flick of the wrist because I feel that I have given them some kind of charge or starting point.
Well, I mean, that's really funny because, I mean, the thing about it's unreasonable to say, okay, if I want to predict how something's going to play out, like in the modern age of technology, we like technologies that work repeatedly. They work the same way. We know how they're going to work because we use these underlying systems of the universe that we know if we do this to it, it does that. But I mean, for something like rolling some dice, it's unreasonable to say like, okay, I just have to know what every single atom is doing. But if you did know enough about the surface of the die, about how it rolls off of your hand, about how it rolls on that specific table you're rolling on, you would be able to roll whatever numbers you want every single time.
But that knowledge seems infinite.
I know. It's beyond us. But the fact that you're trying to do something that's repeatable, like, I don't know, I think that's really cool of you. So what we're getting into is these processes and systems that are really sensitive to their starting conditions. And what you're trying to do is making the starting conditions consistent.
Yes.
Hold them in the exact same way. You throw them at the exact same angle with the exact same flick of the wrist to hope that it comes out in the same way.
Right.
Because these processes that seem random or chaotic to us, like the biggest one, the 3-body problem, it's these things that are these systems that are so sensitive to starting conditions that even if we know the starting conditions, it's very hard for us to track where it's going to go.
Yeah. So the bag of information that all of this data would fit in about every atom and its place and the pressures exerted on it and what happened yesterday and what will happen tomorrow and the way I pinch those dice and all that stuff, that bag of information is so vast and incalculable and completely impenetrable that I must place
some sort of trust in something
beyond me,
right?
Or not even beyond me, because it could be me. And I'm going to get into that in a second. I'm going to place it on something more than just physics.
Yeah.
Right. And science. And so I thought about this for a while when we were kind of doing our research for this. I was like, okay, it seems like there's 3 columns of categorization that we could put rolls of the dice in. And we've really talked a lot about simple probability and science, right? And just the physical role of the thing. But there's 2 others that I can think of. One, that's the first one is totally objective, right? Probability is objective. Physics is objective. Great. Let's go to the total opposite of the spectrum for the second one, and then I'll come back to the middle. The opposite of the spectrum is the totally subjective, the divine. The I Ching is a divination tool. It attempts to pull from the gods or from some other plane of existence, meaning through that. So it's a subjective kind of place for that to live. The middle one is luck,
right?
Because that's now on me. I am lucky. I mean, I'm not, but I can say the words, I am lucky, because outcomes tend to be in my favor more than they're not. So I can say I'm a lucky person, right?
Right.
But what am I doing in kind of bringing luck into the situation? I'm attempting to apply something outside of the objective physical world to the outcomes of this dice, which is why I squeeze them between my thumb and my forefinger. I roll them in a certain way. And I say, oh, wait a minute. I've noticed through repetition that tends to work in my favor. So I continue to engage in that behavior. Right. Those outcomes are seemingly connected through repetition, but may or may not be. And this is an interesting concept of synchronicity, which was coined by Carl Jung and has its connections to the I Ching. It has its connections to storytelling and creativity. And and all of that, where we kind of try to sort of, we look for, we kind of look to prove or validate our thoughts about paranormal existence. And, these coincidences that come up, they're strange to us because that big bag of information that you're talking about is too vast.
Right. Well, I mean, I think the creativity of these random processes come from the fact that the act of surrendering to randomness by rolling something is in itself a black box. When you pour the tea to look at the tea leaves, or you flip the coins to like write out these solid or dashed lines in this specific pattern, that process is a black box. So instead of attributing it to something that we understand, we can attribute it to the further meaning that we make of it.
Mm-hmm. Right. But what we're doing here is we're sort of getting at the whole reason why dice are in these games in the first place is because we're trying to eliminate predictability.
Yes.
Right. Number one, this gives us an exciting environment from which to game in. Two, all through history, from the beginning of time, we try to derive meaning from that which is too complex for us to understand.
Right.
I talk about not creating in a void to my artists, my students. I'm like, you cannot make in a void. Well, the void is that black box.
Right.
The black box has no information in it. We need something to start with. Well, let's start with context. What's the context? I don't know. Roll some dice.
Yeah.
And say, oh, shit, what a fantastic outcome. Now the meaning begins to flow.
Right.
So this is interesting because in my research, sometimes I go down some really irresponsible rabbit holes. Okay. I'm just going to put this out.
Okay.
There. But I'm thinking, oh, Carl Jung and Synchronicity. God, I love that album by The Police. Now all of a sudden I'm off on some kind of ADD rant.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, wait, The Police. So I go into my record collection and I pull out the vinyl for The Police's Synchronicity.
Of course you have.
Well, because I have two of them, actually. One's a clear purple vinyl. Or, never mind. That's a whole different story. But what I remembered about Synchronicity was that there are 3 colored bands of lines on the album cover. And I'm like, God, wouldn't it be wild if they were broken in some way that related to the hexagram from the I Ching? I was disappointed to find out they did not.
Okay.
But observing the album cover did show me that Carl Jung is mentioned on the album cover. I'm like, okay, it's lining up. So
we're going somewhere.
Yes. So I pull out the liner notes, right? And I start looking at the lyrics to the songs. And there's Synchronicity 1 and Synchronicity 2. Synchronicity 1 is much more definitional in its sort of objective approach to what it talks about with synchronicity, right? Synchronicity 2 is much more subjective. It creates this story. And you guys, if you listen to these songs, you'll know the ones I'm talking about. You've probably heard them if you've listened to any kind of classic rock at all. But in Synchronicity 1, there is a line in there. And he says, if we share this nightmare, then we can dream Spiritus Mundi.
Yeah.
And Spiritus Mundi is the spirit of the world, the collective consciousness, back to Carl Jung. It's all starting to connect. And I'm like, this is fucking awesome. Right? All right. So last thing, and then I'm going to throw it back to you because I wanted to keep bringing this back and forth to objectivity. Spiritus Mundi is a term that was first coined, if I'm not mistaken, by W.B. Yeats, the poet, in a poem called The Second Coming, where Yeats sort of goes into this fever dream and enters the Spiritus Mundi, which is the creative space where he can see into the future on some level, but he's drawing upon the collective consciousness of the world and he sees a bleak picture.
Whoa.
But that's where you first sort of start feeling Spiritus Mundi.
Whoa.
So to put this all together, right? The I Ching, the flipping of the coins, the rolling of the dice, all sort of try to divine as verb, they try to divine information about the unknown so that we can arrive at a creative and fulfilling picture of our understanding of the world. That's storytelling.
Well, I'm sorry, like Spiritus Mundi, that's just ringing the bells of like collaborative storytelling to me.
Totally.
Like the collaborative conscious, like entity that is whatever world. Like, yes, Todd, you world build for the main campaign, but we all pour some sort of soul into this.
Yes. And if I had a tagline that would now be applied to my experience as a GM, it would be Spiritus Mundi, because I feel like that is the core of collaborative gameplay and collaborative storytelling.
Well, I mean, it's kind of like Doi, but we're playing a game that's unscripted. Why do we leave it unscripted? Well, because it creates these scenarios where the entire story can turn on its head with one single roll. If I'm not mistaken, Todd, the reason why our world that we play in is that way at all is because you took a bag of rice and poured it out onto the table and you said, all right, here's what the geographic features look like. So here's how the world goes.
100%.
Completely random.
The rice was my I Ching.
Yeah.
I poured the rice onto the table. I traced the outline of the rice onto the paper. And I said, wow, that looks like a peninsula. That looks like where a river might enter a continent. Let's see where that river goes. Oh, there could be something here like a mountain. And bam, the story begins to come from the roll of the dice.
Right. Just completely random.
God, I love that.
So beautiful.
I love that.
I mean, random systems are beautiful. I mean, listen, you look at the universe, how it's gotten where it's gotten. You look at even like biology, how living beings have gotten where they've gotten. Like, it's mind blowing. Like the process of evolution alone, I think people have evolution mistaken. Evolution isn't this march towards better. That's not what it's about. It's about random changes that happen to be good and you survive, neutral, whatever. That's why we have all these different hair colors, or harmful and you die and you can't pass those genes on anymore. So, it's not like one day some creature said, I'm going to sprout an arm because that seems like a good idea.
Well, or because I need to reach a particular thing that's going to feed me.
Right. I mean, and that's the other thing. Evolution doesn't happen on the individual scale. You don't sprout a mutation and pass it on to your children. It happens in a population, in your gametes, when you're replicating that DNA and when the chromosomes are actually exchanging pieces of the same chromosome between each other. And I think that takes place in meiosis 1. Like errors happen there all the time. And it creates these little variations where suddenly you're one type of creature and then you're a little bit different. Mm-hmm. And maybe that puts you out a little bit from the rest. And this is why Pokemon is fucking stupid. I'm sorry, because Pokemon, the individual evolves into a stronger being. That is stupid. That is not how it works. That is misinformation.
I love how you went from where meiosis 1 does X to Pokemon is stupid. And I just want to thank you for that this morning.
Okay, so I've started ranting about how evolution is misunderstood.
Yeah.
But it is this process of, you're copying DNA and there's a little fuck up, or chromosomes are crossing over with each other and there's a little fuck up, and it creates a slight little change, which happens to be somehow important and meaningful. And it's that process over years and 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 years of trial and error of creatures literally bumbling forwards, backwards, and sideways that we are even here. I'm sorry, but we were not meant to be here.
And I'm going to now grab what you just said and bring it over to the subjective again.
Yeah.
Because this is why we embrace the hero's journey as a storytelling archetype, because our trajectory from the time we're born to the time we die, hopefully takes the hero's journey archetype. Sort of we leave, we are fulfilled, and we return. Right. And so that's the simplest form. If you look up the hero's journey and its larger facets and how it sort of unfolds. But what we are as human beings and as storytellers and as imaginative people and creative people is we are looking to understand our lives through the larger forces in the universe, and evolution as a kind of sort of very unpredictable set of forces that could result in something stronger. It could result in death. It could result in something weaker.
Right.
Usually doesn't, but could. has its connections to who we are directly. And so we understand the world through that.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful thing.
Yeah. And, I think it's a shame that sometimes people think that things like evolution are some sort of antithesis to God, like taking the mystery out of a God. But consider the same way that we were talking about tarot or the I Ching is some sort of random process that could be determined by a higher power who understands, like their like Laplace's demon, who understands enough about what is going on that it can influence the outcome. Like, imagine evolution is maybe a process that, a random process where these little changes are happening all the time, but something that could have been created by a God.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, it's a beautiful process in and of itself. And if you're a person who believes in the beauty of your God's creation, why isn't evolution beautiful to you?
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. That's true. All right. So listen, if you're out there listening to this, number one, we want your dice stories.
Yeah, we do.
Jump in the comments and tell us your little quirks or your tidbits of information about your dice, what they mean to you, how you roll them, how you decide which ones to roll. Have you ever thrown out a set of dice because they just don't work? So tell us those things. And we want to comment on those things eventually.
We do.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we've steered all the way back to dice.
Yeah.
We went down a probability rabbit hole.
And this has been an amazing conversation today. And I think probably only a small portion of one that we're probably going to flesh out more of in the future.
Oh my God. Are we done? Is our time up?
We're way over.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
Oh my God.
This is the problem with these talks is I look at a time and I'm like, oh my God.
Just have too much fun.
I know.
Yeah.
I know.
Oh my God.
So first of all, listen, everybody, we want to thank you for listening to iCast Guidance. We love to have you here. Tell a friend about us. We would love that too. If you would like to see some of our gameplay, you could come over to YouTube where we're at Wither and Bloom Studios, where we have a live play game of Daggerheart going on right now. We're also on Substack, where we are at icastguidance.substack.com. You can check us out there, where we will drop this podcast and other podcasts, as well as writing. So you can find all the facets of what we do here and get in on the action. Nathan, this was so cool.
This was phenomenal.
Yeah. I love bouncing ideas off you.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. And to you as well. Oh. All right, everybody. Till next time, you have a great week and we will talk to you soon. Take care.
Take care.